And we have joining us in the studio to discuss this Dr. Jerry Iguilo. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Nisena Capital Limited. Dr. Iguilo, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Annie. Nice seeing you.
Great to have you here. So it doesn't look like it's a lot of good news. So there at least has to be a hedge somewhere. What should investors be doing now amidst all the soaring oil prices? And I think some people are still making money betting, what do they call it, longing and shorting for oil prices. But as investors, especially on the African continent, can we hedge? Is there anywhere to hide from all of this?
Thank you, Annie, for that question. I think more importantly, I think we need to just understand the concept and how we got to this point. And more importantly, for us Nigerians, we might see this war as a distant Middle Eastern story. Unfortunately, that is not where the story ends. For Nigerians, yes, it's a crude oil price story. It's an inflation story. It's also an exchange rate story. But more importantly, is the story of how this impacts and the purchasing power of the Nigerian household. So you've asked the question, is there a hiding place? Unfortunately, we are in a global environment where the global economic environment is charged. Unfortunately, the events that we have seen in the that caused the increase in crude prices are not within our control. Yes, some might argue that it's good for us because we're going to make more revenue for the country. However, there's a lag effect from when that revenue begins to hit the pocket of our households. But immediate effect is that our cost of transportation has increased, cost of living, food prices are going up. So what can we do? As investors, I think the most important thing to do right now is not to panic. That is very important. And without panicking gives you an opportunity to sit down with your investment advisors to discuss strategy. This is a time for strategy. You sit down and you understand that we're in a volatile global environment. So what do you do first? The first and most important thing is to preserve capital. You need to preserve your capital. You need to begin to think of liquidity. This is the time where we say cash is king. So there will be a lot of move towards your short-term treasury bills type investment where you need to find cash and park it because, of course, we are in an uncertain global environment. So there might be opportunities in the short term that you might want to take up. Of course, you need liquidity. So first thing first, you need to have calmness and begin to think of how do I preserve my investments.
So there's gold, but we haven't seen gold move as fast as it did some months ago. I believe we saw a little bit of drop under the 5,000. That's been, the record high. We have the equities market. You see Nigeria's equities market, even in the face of all of this soaring. They say it's the pension fund. I don't know if it's the FDI. But when you look at, you mentioned the treasury bill, the fixed income market, that could also be a possibility. When you look at this basket of possibilities, where should I go as an investor?
Well, I think most important, like I said, is a point of strategy. Very important. Now, you spoke of equity. Yes, in today's equity world, of course, it's very interesting that Nigerian equity is continuing to hold. However, because we are an emerging market, we're not sure how the market will turn in the short term. That is why when you invest in equity today, you need to be very strategic. Of course, we see the increase in oil prices. So which companies are benefiting? So you target those good oil and gas companies that are listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So that you can also benefit from some of those gains they are making from the increase in crude prices. Of course, if you haven't invested now, you are investing late. But it's still good because you can still capture some of those. And then when you say gold, yes, gold has always been with a store of value in an uncertain environment. And of course, there's that need to rush into gold. But one thing also that is happening is that most people are moving into cash position because in an uncertain environment, your cash is king. I think we can see what has happened in Dubai. If you don't have liquidity, it's a big challenge. So the first thing really that needs to happen is that we need to move into liquid environment. When you want to target your equity investment, you target companies that are going to benefit from this environment, volatile environment, but more important than what we call defensive stocks. Defensive stocks are your stocks that have to do with things that we use daily. Food, for example, infrastructure, warehousing, things that generally also they're not luxury. So stay away from luxury in this global environment. Everyone needs to be cautious. I say we should be cautiously optimistic.
So you talk about liquidity. Yeah. Cash is king. When you have cash, aren't you just cheating yourself? Because then it starts losing value, especially with all of this. We expect inflation to skyrocket, whether this ends or is still continuing.
Yes. So in today's environment, if you look at Nigerian short-term treasury bills, they're still within, up to the top of 20%, returns. So if you look at our inflation where it is today, we still look, so in real terms, you still have about 5%. So that's why I say, in the short term, your cash is king, especially in the Nigerian environment, because the return is still very solid. Yes, with inflation, of course, we know that with the increase in crude prices, we've seen the petrol prices gone up, which means we're going to begin to see gradual food price inflation, and of course general inflation, and even global inflation to say the least. But the most important thing is that in an uncertain world, you need to make sure you have liquidity, because that is when you have to preserve. The strategy has to change to preserving your capital, but also playing in your strategic portfolios of equities, but choosing the right equities to invest in, not chasing fast income or chasing quick returns on equity.
But is it too late now to get into the markets, any of these markets?
Of course, it's never too late to enter in the market.
But the best time you could have started investment is yesterday.
Of course, depending on where you are investing. One thing about market timing is either too early or you are too late. But the most important thing, if you have a long-term strategy on your investment, you can get into the market at any given time, have a long view, and of course, over time, it's expected that your portfolio will average out, and then you're going to be on the positive side in the long term.
So another conversation that's coming to light at this time is intra-African activities, transactions, trade, and all of that. Because if you had more of within the continent, then you are, to some degree, you eliminate the risks that you are exposed to. I wonder if we're to look at the continent, what opportunities you think investors could have at this time?
So from that context, I think that one thing that we need to remember is that the global, the geopolitical environment we are in does not matter whether you're an African or not. It's a global challenge. The cost of energy globally has gone up, so it affects everyone, and it's not within our control. Having said that, Africa intertrade is something that we Africans must, and at some point, begin to give critical attention to. Because if we trade together, the market is bigger. We're about 1.5 billion people, and that gives us an opportunity to really reduce the cost of transaction costs between the countries within Africa, and that also makes businesses within Africa much more profitable. So I believe that having inter-African trade, or increasing or investing in an intra-African trade is a very good thing to do at this moment. However, we just need to understand that the environment we are in is not controlled by outcomes or events within Africa.
All right, Dr. Jerry Grillo, Chief Executive Officer of Messena Capital Limited, thank you so much for those tips this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Annie, for having me. Have a great day.
Great.